is the top 10 loadouts currently within Warzone, and keep in mind that there are a lot of great options with the current weapon balancing changes that have happened that open the doors on a ton of weapons that just can't make it into my top 10 overall list. There's actually a website called Warzone Ranked, and this you can actually go through, select the specific weapon in the meta section at the top of the screen. You can kind of scroll down to a specific weapon, and let's say you wanted to find out a kilo build, you can click on that and you can see what other people are using. But in that, I'm going to go through my 10. So first off, we have the CX9, which has been steadily one of the better SMGs. He's been kind of outclassed, outshined by a lot of the Vanguard weapons. And I think even a couple Cold War weapons are very good as well, whether it's the MP5 or something along those lines. CX9 has been kind of one of those ones that's been kind of holding it down for the modern warfare weapons. The build for that is the CX38S barrel, which is an integrated suppressor, tac laser, 50 round drum, sleight of hand, and the CXFR, which is like a no stock or collapsible stock. You can rock the M4 as well. We have similar builds. We're basically use longest barrel, all that stuff, big mag. It's a pretty similar build if you use it. Instead, it has a commando foregrip. Agency suppressor task force 3X field agent grip with the 60 round mag. And that's kind of how you'd build that out. You could use that more of a sniper support too, build it all ADS, but probably not the way I would go. And then perks, you can go with serpentine, which is kind of the most common one for the first category. Other than that, maybe go EOD if you feel like you're running into explosive a lot. Overkill, which is most of the classes. Then we got combat scout, which is still pretty broken at the moment. If you're using slower weapons, you might want to go amped just so you have a better weapon swap speed, and then whatever lethal tactical you want to use. I tend to go with stims and throwing knives for rebirth. And then we have our regain classes, which are pretty much your second loadout, or if you only have the opportunity to get one loadout and maybe you're going to pick up another gun, you can go with these, and they're pretty much identical. The Automaton is one of those ones that fits as a long range meta. STG is kind of balanced in there, but I think for most people this one's a little bit easier to use. So for that one, we would go ahead and go with this build, MX 600 mm barrel, Zach 600 mm. Then we got the SVT 3 to 6x, or what a lot of people are doing is switching over to this 3.25x for the bigger map, and then the 2.5x on the smaller map. Again, preference, Anastasia padded, tight grip, fully loaded because of the regain opportunity, and then a normal build you would just use on hand for the better aim down sight. Then we got Polymer, 75, Langton, and Carver. For the amp, pretty straightforward, Agency, Task Force, Ember Sighting, 30 round fast, and serpent. And you primarily use this for one gunfight. Pick up that person's gun because hopefully they're holding the meta. Besides that, it's good for that one or two gunfights there. And the bows are pretty much the same. I got an honorable mention here, which got a lot of buffs. They brought back the one-shot headshot, and this one is pretty versatile because of the fire rate. A lot like the Gorenko, where you can just spam fire that thing. So you do get a little bit more forgiveness on that, especially after the buffs they made to it. Built for that is the Rytec AMR suppressor, the 7 straight barrel, tac laser, S-TOV tac wrap, stippled. And this is pretty much all building aim down sight speed with bullet velocity. And then we got the Cooper Carbine, which I think a lot of people do use at long range, but if you go against a gun that is actually good at long range, you can tend to get hurt. Cooper works very versatile up to about 70-ish meters. Even with this build, super easy to use. Just beyond that, it kind of becomes a marshmallow shooter and makes it really hard to hit those shots because you need pretty much almost every bullet to land. The build for that is recoil booster, Cooper custom, slate reflector, remove stock, tight grip on hand, polymer with the 60 round drum, compressed rounds, and the skeletal. And this one's more of a sniper support. It will delete. Then we get into our top tier viable. Snipers are kind of making a comeback just because the long range options have been getting worse and worse with the 3 to 6x. The first one that we have here is the Volk with the Gorenko, and the Volk is just one of those ones that's been very steady. It's kind of sat there while a bunch of stuff around it has gotten nerfed. It has great sniper supports potential, a little bit better at range than we saw with the Cooper. Low recoil, but the TTKs are better on this version of the Volk. So that's why it would outshine the other one, just because of the TTK alone. We've got recoil booster, the Kravsnik 428. Slate reflector, the Reisdorf adjustable perfectionist on hand taped, Gorenko 45, subsonic, and skeletal. You could always go lengthen if you don't care about staying off the mini map. And the Gorenko build is going to be the Mercury silencer, the 420mm Empress, the 3 to 6x reinforced, discard on hand, stippled with the 10 round mag, and then we also have the bipod, as well as we're using FMJ. There's not really any good options here. Incendiary would hurt the bullet velocity and damage. We don't want that. Subsonic, we're staying off the mini map anyways because we have a Mercury, and then That's kind of how that works, and the FMJ is kind of what's left, which gives us discard. So that's kind of how you can build that one out. If you run out of ammo, you get towards the end, you will reload quicker. That brings us to the 3-line, which I think this one is a little bit easier to use, less forgiving on the rate of fire. This one's more of a traditional sniper, a little bit slower, and it kind of adjusts that way. So we got Mercury, Kavalskaya 820, 4-8 or 3-6, or no optic at all. You can actually go that and use the default optic. The Zach Custom, silent focus, on hand, polymer lengthened, 20 round mag with heavy foregrip. Pretty straightforward build. FFAR is kind of making its return. I don't think there's a lot of great sniper support options, but with the buffs, it does perform a little bit better up close than it was because of the aim down sight that they made to it. But overall, it's not like this is going to be the other two are the better option. Probably the Cooper is a better option than this one, and so is the Volk. But this one's a good alternative if you're a sniper, want to go ahead and experiment with other things. We got Suppressor, Ultralight, Bruiser, 50 round, Serpent, and then we're basically using Iron Sights. This is all mostly mobility and aim down sight build where we're not really focusing on being any kind of slower. And again, this one you'd probably switch over to amped because we're rocking a sniper. Next top tier viable is going to be the Vargo with the PPSH. PPSH received the biggest nerfs, I think, out of the patch, but they didn't nerf it enough where it's unusable. They changed the mag size, modified the damage, but the rate of fire is what really makes this forgiving for a lot of players. There's just a lot less situations where you're going to be able to 1v3. Just because you got to get the reload in because of the way the ammo works. So overall, pretty solid between the Vargo and the PPSH. We're going to go Recoil Booster, Kavalskaya 230, Slay Reflector, Moves, Tight Grip, Quick, Pine Tar, the Nambu 64 round, Subsonic, and Skeletal. And then the Vargo is just kind of all around. It's been solid. One of the things that kind of holds it back is the same thing that holds back a lot of Cold War guns and Modern Warfare. It's just that optical zoom just doesn't compare with the 3 to 6x, which even has been nerfed. Now it's kind of balanced it out where you could get away with the 3x and you're still fine. So you can definitely go that route with the Grew Suppressor Task Force. We got Spetsnaz Speed Grip with the 60 round and the 3x. And that brings us into the Meta Chasers, which I would say that this meta is pretty close. There's a lot of things that really come down to preference, and a lot of these can shift up and down. One of the ones that has been kind of sneaking up at everyone, it's had the highest KD for any weapon in Warzone pretty much for a long time, or at least one of the highest, and that is the EM2. It recently got buffed, so it has a little bit better utility there. I think it's still a little bit more of a mid to high skill gun just because the recoil is a little bit jerky and it's a little bit slower fire rate. So you get penalized hard for missing shots. Overall, pretty solid. There are a couple builds for it though. We can go Agency, Task Force, Field Agent, 40 round. If you want a little bit faster aim down sight, you can go with Ranger. Or you can actually drop the 3x optic because it has a built-in optic that is a little bit lower zoom, which probably works great for Rebirth Island and Fortune's Keep. And then you can put on a Serpent Wrap if you want better aim down sight. Or you can actually do a stock, whether it's combat stock or raider stock, so you get significantly better strafe speed at range, make it a little bit a harder target to hit. So you got a couple options there. My preference is still the 3x. I just think it looks the best, and that's what I've been comfortable with, even though the other option is perfectly viable. And then we have the Blixen, which still hits pretty hard, but I would say it's a little bit more of a middle to high skill because the recoil is a little bit harder with the build you got to use, and then you got to aim for upper chest because that's where you're going to maximize the TTK. With the recoil booster, the RMK barrel, Slate Reflector, the Skeletal CR10, Perfectionist Quick, Hatched, 54 Gorenko with hollow point and hand stop. Normally you'd run subsonic, but with this one, the hollow point makes a difference in TTK in terms of consistency, so you can make sure that you're getting those shots. Because it has a slower fire rate, it can get outgunned by other guns. Next up is the Whitley, which has been pretty good for a while, but it's a little bit more situational. You have to make sure you have cover because you're gonna have to have a reload in the mix. It has very little recoil, does very well. It's just held back heavily by having a smaller mag. You could go with the bigger mag that higher damage, but it's gonna be a lot harder to hit shots. So it's kind of one of those ones that it's definitely worth trying out, but at the end of the day, you kind of still have other options that are just as good, I would imagine, because they're very close. It's just super easy to use, so low skilled players might enjoy it for that reason alone. So we have the MX silencer, the Gracie M Mark 9, 2.5, or one of the other optics we've talked about, the CGC R4 hard scope on hand hatch grip with the 45 round lengthen in hand stop. So pretty straightforward. You can go Carver or even Strife angled if you want to have less recoil on the gun, but pretty straightforward build, not that much. Marco's still one of my favorite SMGs because the mobility is super easy to use. It doesn't have a ton of recoil until you get a lot of shots in, and then it does that weird recoil pattern. But overall, very good mobility, easy to use, and a lot of fun. Recoil booster, the Perfetto Lesto, slate reflector, Immorito FR, momentum quick, taped, 64 round hollow point with the skeletal. And just keep in mind, there's a lot of builds for these. You can go a little bit more of a strafe speed build. You can do a momentum, like a fast fire rate build. This just happens to be the build that I like. Like I said, you could always reference Warzone Ranked if you want to see some alternate builds for the exact same gun. And then absolute meta, I think right now is still the UMG, or UGM rather. And that's just because it's good damage, fast fire rate, big mag. Even though they nerfed it, it's still super easy to use. And what we're using on this is the MX silencer, the Bernard barrel 2.5 or the 3.5. The Mercier tight grip on hand hatch 100 round got nerfed down from 120. And then we got lengthened and strife angled. And that brings us to the close range meta, which is the been for a while. You still got to make sure you line up your shots, but it's very forgiving once you get beyond that initial range because it's still super easy to use. And that is the Armaguerra, which has the recoil booster, precision barrel, slate reflector, Emerito skeletal, sleight of hand, or you can even go steady if you want better aim down sight, like strafe speed. And then we got quick taped 55, which has got nerfed a little bit, hollow point and skeletal, and that's kind of how it works out. I'm getting a little bored of this UGM, but it is what it is. Appreciate the support. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.